if you ask for a Modelo, they're actually telling bartenders, because they'll say, like when you're in Mexico, they'll say, blonde or negro. And they're telling them, don't say that, because not just black people who are ignorant, but white people especially will flip out on you when you say the Spanish word for black. Just means negro. Just means, I mean, words are now evil, folks, that have nothing to do with anything. This is the mass mental illness we're dealing with. While all of us are having our rights taken and freedoms taken, we are obsessing over stuff like this. It is crazy. Coming up, we've seen the president of Mexico, the leader of Canada, and, of course, the president of the U.S. meeting, pushing the expansion of NAFTA and GATT, trying to hurry that through before Donald Trump gets into office. We've got the EU coming out, the Council on Foreign Relations, saying that they want to have economic warfare to force us to stay inside these global agreements that we never voted to enter. It's amazing. And in the middle of all this, we've got Hillary Rodham Clinton, who I've been covering for 21 years on air. I remember her and the Chinese missile secrets and selling us out to foreign powers. I remember all the deaths. I remember FBI agents that were in the White House coming out and talking about the bizarre stuff they saw that later Hillary admitted. She goes, oh, it's a joke that I've got crack pipes and Mao Zedong on the Christmas tree. Remember that? It's like, what's wrong with you? These are, from the outside looking in, seem like degenerates, seem like mentally ill people that are just into doing weird stuff. Perverts, basically. I mean, I don't have a degree in criminology, you know, like our next guest does, but sitting back watching this and studying Kim Jong-un and his megalomania, I look at Hillary, it seems like she's a would-be dictator. And we're going to go to our guest, who's the valiant Secret Service agent that's had the will to go public, Dan Bongino, another guy that has a lot of courage, is going to be joining us tomorrow. Crisis of character, Gary J. Byrne, a White House Secret Service officer, discloses his firsthand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. And I have just started reading the book, and it is just nightmarish because it fits into everything we've already seen and know. I mean, this woman has a criminal mind. He has criminal energy. Now, that's a layperson's view. We're going to get his view here in just a moment. But first, here's a clip of where he called it like it is and said she's a dictator. Here it is.
And in 2016, she's running again. And you felt compelled to tell the story because why? Let me ask that.
Because I want Americans to know what the real Clinton administration is like. Mrs. Clinton is not a leader. She's a very, very angry person all the time. I've seen many instances that I talk about in my book, Crisis of Character, where she displays this holier-than-thou attitude, do as I say, not as I do. She's a dictator. She comes across as a dictator. I've seen her berate many people, and myself included. And I've never seen any example that would lead me to believe that she could lead this country. I mean,
you know, you describe a woman that is very phony. In other words, you talk about how she'd tell you to go to hell or tell another agent to go blank himself.
Correct.
And how she threw a Bible at a Secret Service officer or agent.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the vase story, which we'll get to in a minute.
Right.
But if the cameras were on, she was close to Bill, but it was manufactured. It was not real.
Absolutely.
Camera goes off, different person.
Yeah.
And,
all right, let's go to him now, but I wanted to show that clip from Hannity. Now, I've had Bongino on. I've talked to other Secret Service folks off record. They didn't give me anything secret. They just said, look, it's worse than you know. It's worse than you're saying. And I was once at a party with a celebrity, and there was a current Secret Service guy there, pretty senior, and he said, no, Alex, you're dead on, but it's worse than you're saying. And then I talked to Bongino, said the same thing. And he never told me anything secret. They started threatening him when he came on. What'd you tell Alex? Because I was saying some stuff on air about what we know about the Clintons, and they thought he told me. His house got broken into. His car did. His kids basically got threatened. He doesn't want me to talk about it because it sounds wimpy to talk about threats, but it's not. These guys have real courage. I got to tell you, Mr. Byrne, I mean, I hope he doesn't have any car accidents or airplane accidents or anything, because the Clintons are organized criminals, in my view, and there's a lot of death around them. But I'm going to stop right there. Mr. Byrne, thank you so much for coming on. CrisisOfCharacterBook.com. Let's go to the waterfront here. Tell us. I mean, you're putting your life on the line here. I think that goes unsaid. So this isn't about just selling a book. Tell us the truth, sir. You're warning America.
Sure. I wrote my book, first of all, thank you for having me. I wrote my book because I want people to know the truth, just like you said. And all those things that you were saying about senior people in the Secret Service, telling you that everything you've said before is true. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I want people to know what the real Hillary Clinton's like. Listen, if she wasn't running for office, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care at all. But she has a good chance of becoming the next president of the United States. And I want people to know that that is not a good thing. She has an explosive, dangerous personality. She has this ability. She has this inability to focus on the problem. She seems to focus on what caused the problem. You know, I've seen her berate her staff that were supposedly friends of hers to the point where they were terrified of her. And it just goes from one thing to the other.
There's been reports of her by other Secret Service agents punching Bill Clinton repeatedly. I mean, almost knocking him down. Are those reports accurate?
So I've never witnessed that, but I did see the president show up at the Oval Office one morning after a bad fight up at the mansion the night before where a vase got broken. And when he showed up at the Oval Office House, he had a black eye. He had a mark under his eye, and he was trying to conceal it with makeup. And to the point where I actually said to his secretary and his assistant, what's that mark under the president's eye? And they said, the one assistant said, he's allergic to coffee. I said, allergic to coffee under one eye? And as I walked out of the room, I actually turned to the other assistant, the secretary, and I said, I'm allergic to the back of somebody's hand. And I was just trying to get a rise out of him to see what the deal was. And it was just so bizarre. I mean, I realize people fight at times, but once you hear these, you witness these things, and my coworkers, we don't talk about these things because we have nothing else to do. We pass this information on, so the next person.
No, I understand. It's unprecedented to have the Secret Service, and you're not the only one coming out.
Sure.
But I mean, it obviously has to be done. I mean, the word I get from high-level Pentagon, high-level State Department, high-level former CIA, and is that Hillary basically is a Chinese agent / Saudi Arabian agent, and I want to see if we can segue into some of that because you've mainly, just covered her outburst. But correct me if I'm wrong. Right. You were there at the White House for quite a while. You might get into that history, but it looks like following her for 20 years, being forced to. It's not like I want to watch her or read her or see what she does. It seems like her lies are getting wilder. She seems more unstable, looks even crazier than she did 20 years ago. She seems to be deteriorating is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so I've never seen anything that would lead me to believe that she's, other than like her policies seem to lean to some of these countries, but I've never seen anything that I would call, out of the ordinary. But what along the lines you were talking about as she's getting older is, my take on it, Alex, is that she's getting more and more comfortable with it. That she's being more and more the real Hillary, which I in my opinion, she's more of a dictator than anything else. I think she's getting comfortable with it. I think she feels like it's been accepted by the people who are going to vote her in, and that's the way it's going to be.
Well, expanding on that, I don't normally go off a book by their cover, but clearly sometimes you're pumping gas and some thugs pull up. It doesn't matter whether black thugs, white thugs, whoever. You just pick up these guys are thugs, and sure enough, you see one of them, shoot their mouth off at, an old lady or something. And when you look at her, though, she just radiates like she could play a female Joker. I mean, if I was in casting in Hollywood, and I actually have worked in some films and consulting, I would cast her as a female supervillain. I mean, I'm not being sarcastic. Yeah. As a guy that has a gut instinct, criminology background, just her demeanor, the way she looks and acts sometimes, and the way her face has changed so suddenly, what's going on there? Because to me, she looks like she's mentally ill.
Well, I'll give you two examples of kind of the outburst that you're talking about. When I was still working at the White House, we had hired some new employees. And these two young officers, I was down in the break room, and a young officer came down, and he said, man, what a weird day. And we said, what's going on? He said, well, he passed by the First Lady, and he said hello, and she told him to go to hell. And, we said, well, that's the way it is around here. She doesn't seem to like us much. And then another guy came in, he walked up, and he said, that's nothing. He said, last month I was walking past her down the West Colonnade, and he said good morning to her, and she told him to go F himself. And so that's two examples. And this happened, the way it happened, Alex, a sergeant overheard them telling the stories to myself and the other people down there, and they investigated it. And the agents, the senior agents of the agency took this so serious, they came down to talk to this guy. two inspectors, and they actually apologized and said, just understand this, that you're not going to get an apology from anyone else. And the bizarre thing about that, Alex, was the second guy who she told to go F himself, he had been in the Army a couple of years before, and he had been in Somalia on a mission basically that President Clinton had sent him on. And it wasn't, today we know that Somalia, because of the movie Black Hawk Down.
They hung him out to dry.
Right. This was before that, like the first deployment to Somalia. And this guy was wounded and received the Purple Heart. Then a couple of years later, he comes to work for the Secret Service Uniform Division, and the First Lady tells him to go F himself. It's just so bizarre. This is one of the reasons I felt compelled. This is the person that people want to put in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
I think it's insane.
Well, bottom line, Gary, I've just noticed, being around a few years, that criminal types don't like police officers, folks like that. And it's not that police are perfect or Secret Service are perfect. They just don't like the manliness. They don't like the straightforwardness. They don't like being looked in the eye. And I've confirmed with dozens of reporters over the 20 years and people that have worked around her, meetings she goes to, like Davos and others, that they tell people, and I've interviewed the people at the hotels after these events are over. I've made films on this, that they tell people in briefings, do not look Hillary in the eye. So as bad as you've been getting it and other law enforcement officers, the word is when she is out around just general folks, no tips. And it's not just her, it's this whole group. No tips, very rude, very hateful. Separately, I don't want to segue off of Hillary, but I'm told that it's not as bad, but it's similar with Obama, and it's similar with his wife.
Yeah, that I don't know about, because I left before they got there. I actually left when George W. Bush was president in 2003. I transferred to the Air Marshal, so that I don't have any information on. I'm sorry.
It's been in the press, though.
Yes, I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it, and I've read some of the same stories you have. Absolutely. Well,
I'll tell you this, when they bring up our show or InfoWars to her, we played the video, she all of a sudden goes and her eyes get wide and she has like an adrenaline rush and just gets scared. And it sounds to me like that's the type of response she has around guys like you.
Yes, I think that's, I agree with you. It's so bizarre to think about the things that I've written when I was writing my book, Crisis of Character, and you look at the stuff in there. And, writing a book, you review it and you edit it and you edit it. And some of this stuff, I was like, oh my God, it's just so crazy. She could be the next president of the United States, and she's under FBI investigation. How does that keep going on? How is that possible?
And she's been caught lying from every angle. It's ridiculous.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, according to the history of the Watergate investigation, she was fired from that because of unseemly behavior. That just sounds so bizarre. Well,
FBI agents that worked in the White House and others have been audited, harassed, all sorts of things have happened. I don't want to, get into speculation areas here, but making the decision with you and your family to write this book, really nobody else has had the huevos to do this, maybe one other person. I got to say, sir, I really hope you've got a big insurance policy taken out for your family.
Yeah, so we knew what we were getting into, and we've taken our precautions and did our due diligence. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Well, you know what? You're on the side of right, and just we really. I'm serious. I'm not kissing your butt. I don't do this with a lot of our guests.
No, I understand, and I appreciate that.
Well, I admire your courage. If we had more people like you, sir, we wouldn't be in such trouble.
Well, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
What can you talk about the process of deciding to write this book, Crisis of Character, sir?
Sure. 10 years ago, if somebody suggested I was going to do this, I would have said they were crazy. I thought I would take this stuff to my grave. But things changed over the years, Alex, and as it got closer and closer to this election, and I saw she was more likely to win, I thought, how can this happen? How can somebody that operates like this have an opportunity to become president of this country? And so I decided that I would write a book about my life, and I would, of course, include all of it in my time there. And the original title of my book was actually Fence Jumpers to Hijackers. My time at the White House and then my time as an air marshal. But as it got more to time to put the book out, and as we developed it, it became Crisis of Character. And it's not just about her crisis of character. It's a little bit about my crisis of character too, to the process of deciding to do this and putting yourself and your family at this kind of risk.
Yeah, I